Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're going to be looking at the next episode of Warhammer vs. 40k, Episode 5, The Imperium Strikes by a Fan with Too Much Time. Now, last time around, we got to hyperspace ramming, we got to, honestly, really good spatial tactics to use debris as a shield with tractor cannons as an actual viable tactic. I'm sorry, I'm so blown away on that. That is so freaking cool! More than anything else, more than all the people talking about, well, you can't do hyperspace ramming, it's illegal, and or just other reasons they're complaining if it is or isn't canon. They've had tractor beams. Why is that not a thing that happens more often? Literally because there are literal super weapons canonically in Star Wars, Centerpoint Station, that do that. Although I can also see why anyone in charge would not want to bring that up because, you know, it's something everyone has and they don't like to talk about how it's literally kind of overpowered if you really beef it up enough. Never mind, I'm overthinking it. More importantly, we're going to jump right in and see what happens. Normally, this is where I would say I go into a lot of detail because I'm an English major. I have a lot of experience when it comes to writing, and this is a really good piece of fan fiction. But I have good faith in this, so it'll be good. I'm not going to really analyze this more than I usually do, which is constantly and compulsively because I do it anyways. But other than that, we're going to jump right in. You guys know the deal. Link below, original video. Hit it up. Already done? Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe on a fan's channel because, dear God, how the hell does he only have less than 10,000 subscribers at the time I'm recording this? I've subscribed. Fix that yourself. Do that. And let's get started. Ooh.
The ship quaked once more, resounding with a deep, thunderous thrum. Dr. Hackney was done asking nicely, done being tactful and careful, while the other two on the science team were too timid to speak up directly to a woman as formidable as Dr. Sheena. The ship was literally shaking. They were being confined to the laboratory. It was long past the time for temerity. What?
So she was removed from the bridge and she's actually sitting quietly. I mean, I know they said the intro scrawl, but she didn't explain to everyone. It's like, yeah, we fucked. And okay, so there's a lot of scientists there who either know what's going on and aren't doing anything, or want to know what's going on and don't know yet. I'm not sure which one is worse, honestly.
In the galaxy is happening here. Sheena, what did you do?
Oh,
the man half accused. Dr. Sheena hadn't spoken since arriving almost 5 minutes ago in the custody of two
She seemed
clone
very outspoken.
troopers.
It's weird for her not to
Dr.
speak.
Hackney had known she had been conversing with the Jedi in charge of their expedition, but had been surprised to see her returned in custody. She didn't like Jedi. Everyone on the science crew knew that already.
Yeah.
But what could she have possibly said to goad a man as tranquil as Renfai into doing this? She had spent the rest of the time
I like how they're highlighting how tranquil Renfai is because it does show two things. One, the severity of her action that she could do something that could break his calm, or more specifically, that his calm broke in the first place because his entire worldview is literally shattering. He's feeling the psychic backlash of all those deaths that weren't supposed to happen, just hitting him. And then everything on top of that making it worse. And she's literally kicking him when he's down. I mean, she doesn't mean it that way. She's honestly making the correct choice to GTFO because the Imperium. And, you know, she was proven right within a few seconds of that. Minutes, seconds, I'm not really sure how long the battle took, actually, now that I think about it. But more importantly, yeah, no, she hit him at a weak point because he was in a bad state. And she was right, and he's probably gripping with that himself, and there's going to be a thing. But I like how they're going back to that. They're showing the fact that him breaking is noteworthy, which is weird because he's not actually the focus of this entire scene, but it's good to include that kind of information because it shows a connection between scenes, which is honestly one of the things people have the hardest times with. How do you carry over events from one to the next rather than make it look like episodic pieces of, hey, this happened. Okay, now this happened. Nothing connecting them. That's the thing. That's actually a massive problem when it comes to fan fiction or just newbie writers in general because you don't connect the scene. Having this little tie-in to Renfai's lack of composure and the fact that they're thinking about her actions in reference to that to make him lose his composure to do something to her. It isn't a direct reference to it, but it does reference previous events in such a way that does make it relevant. So in a writing term, that's actually well done.
after her return, moping as if weathering some tragedy. The biggest tragedy, as far as the other three scientists were concerned, was that their lower-ranking staff members had been confined to their quarters suddenly and without explanation.
So
Dr. Hackney's accusations seemed to finally snap her out of her torpor as her eyes raised and went wild. Me? I didn't do anything but be the voice of reason. If you want to blame
She's right.
someone, blame the Sith-spawned Jedi for this travesty.
Sith-spawned Jedi?
Well, we're going to blame
not
you
Anakin.
until you tell us what in the name of the many moons happened up there.
Bad shit.
Dr. Hackneyan retorted. At this, Dr. Sheena relented. The Syrian explained the events that had proceeded to her being sent to the laboratory, doing
What is
her
he
best to be
focusing
brief
on?
without sparing any detail. Well,
I don't usually comment on the pictures when they're just individual points, but this is a picture they've previously used to introduce her. But what the hell were you focusing on here? Just like the little data cube? Like, it's a holographic display. Why is this the focal point? I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's like a very cool little explodey thing is what it's referencing because we're just thinking explosions. It's not, but it's kind of what it looks like in the circular radius. It's the only thing I can think of.
Well, clearly
New
they are
character?
some kind of religious society, with this emperor of theirs at or near its head. Fascinating. Dr. Tirani concluded.
Oh, so she knows what's going on, and Wait, she knows what's going on. She heard the mention of the Emperor, which is only said when they were translating it. How did she find this out? Because Sheena only heard that because she was literally being dragged off the bridge at the same time. Everyone else doesn't. How does she know this?
Always hammering religion into your anthropological studies, Tirani. The outsiders are obviously some kind of autocracy, most likely an empire if they have an emperor. Nothing innately religious about that.
I like how both of them are completely right and wrong in equal measure. On the one hand, their society is very much religious. And also, the empire shouldn't be religious and should just be an empire with an emperor. It's literally the dichotomy of 40K right there. It was meant as a secular society, but when the emperor went into the chair, it became religious because about 10,000 years of genetic and intellectual drift. And by drift, I mean it was like a cliff that they were kind of pulled out of, then just kicked over the edge again. Yeah. But just, I like it because depending on what time you're talking about, it's both accurate and completely wrong. I love this. And considering just how religious some of these orders are, I would say it's probably further along the timeline. I don't know when it started becoming that way with the Templars. I think they always were more dedicated towards the Emperor than not, but I could be mistaken.
Said Dr. Orthan, sneering all the while.
Also,
Oh,
Batgirl art.
really?
Neat.
Because I'm pretty sure Dr. Sheena described a ship, and I quote, covered in skull iconography.
Okay, so
and-
she did describe it to them.
Skulls? What kind of skulls? Dr. Hackneyan suddenly asked.
Oh,
Dr.
that's
Sheena felt
important.
a cold surge run through her.
Oh, okay. One, I like the different art for the different people. Two, the fact that they're picking up on skulls is actually really useful because, I mean, in 40K, we don't think it because there's very few skull variations. There's orc skulls, there's Eldar skulls, there's human skulls, and then there's Tyranids, which are all over the place. So generally, if you don't understand it, it might be one of them. That's the main factions. Of course, there's all like the other life forms and fauna, and there's tons of that and other aliens that don't really exist anymore. But when it comes to showing skulls, you can tell a lot based on that. Weird that they're immediately assuming they might be able to recognize it because that's the only reason you would highlight that. On the other hand, considering how ubiquitous humans are, it's probably not that great of a stretch to think, okay, we can confirm that right now by checking the skull, because human skulls are distinctive, mostly to other humans.
From skull to spine at this. I can't be sure, she said, standing. But they looked like human skulls, and the statues were of angels and men in armor. How did I not notice before?
Big
she murmured.
explosions or things.
Notice what?
Asked Dr. Orthan.
It's a human empire.
Dr. Tirani's face contorted in disbelief. A coincidence. We need more data,
The hell
she
is this
asserted.
thing?
Dr. Orthan looked at her.
Oh,
What?
interesting alien
What's a
device.
coincidence?
Or, well, facial
He asked.
structure.
It must be, Dr. Sheena said, moving now towards the main computer. Between the four of them, they had some of the greatest minds within the entire Republic. Mathematics, history, hyperon mechanics, quantum theory, xenoanthropology, and political science was just a small sampling of the subjects which each of them were well.
The fuck is this thing? I mean, I know there's some interesting alien variations, but this looks like someone gave up halfway through modeling a clay alien. It's like, ah, fuck it. Throw some googly eyes on it. We're done. It looks like it's out of Clone Wars or Claymation, and I honestly can't tell which one it is. Oh, wow. So I can't tell if that's hair or gills. It'd probably look better if it was more of a detailed image, but wow, that is a face. That is definitely a face. The brow ridges on the nose just going like, hey, I got my own four-eyed glasses. Look, we sit. It is... Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just stuck on this thing. Oh, man.
Well versed in. Dr. Sheena's speciality was as a hyperon theorist, megahydronocatalyst technician, and political technological predictions analyst.
Oh.
She was also, less officially, a slicer, and it was this skill set she now deployed as she hacked into the Honor Hound's databanks, retrieving as many pictures and scans of the outsider craft as she could, as well as the translation matrix for their language. Another tremor ran through the ship as she sent the data to Dr. Tarani.
Well, one of you clue me in already.
Dr. Orthan whined. Hackneyan's eyes went wide, his hands dropping limply to his sides as he guessed upon what Sheena suspected. Don't even concern yourself.
This is weird. It's just because I thought it was just generic stock picture of people, but now they're pulling out and you see the Empire symbol and it's like, oh, was this an Empire cosplay photo shoot? Yeah, just weird choice.
With it.
No idea why this would be a thing.
It's madness to even consider it.
Consider what?
This,
Human Empire?
Dr. Sheena said, turning on the holotape.
Crazy, never thought that would happen in Galaxy like this one.
And showing them a three-dimensional image of one of the larger outsider ships. It was massive, covered from bow to stern in enormous stacks of weapons. But that wasn't the reason she displayed it now.
It's a cathedral.
The ship was built with layers upon layers of buttresses, statues, pillars, iconography, and art which covered the whole vessel even more densely than the guns themselves. Golden, angelic depictions of humanoids in robes holding aloft swords stood or strode in frozen rendition as statues and mosaics.
It's just one of those weird things I want to point out here, that from the Star Wars side, this probably looks incredibly weird. Like, why is there such a huge ship, but it's massively religious with all this crazy, ornate nonsense? Because it doesn't make sense. But honestly, from the 40K side, okay, it's also ornate nonsense. But considering that, beliefs are literal power in the warp, having a strong enough belief that this is also a cathedral and you'll be safe in it might actually help the Geller field if you're trying to jump. It is legitimately something you could actually make an argument for. Is it going to help a lot? I mean, that really would depend on the plot. That's really all would actually matter. But the fact is, you can make the argument. So it actually is functional here. Not intended that way, but it could actually work that way.
Twin-headed avians stretched their wings in stylized, shining art across
they wouldn't
the
know what an
hull
eagle
of
is,
the
yeah.
ship. And the skulls.
A lot of skulls.
So many skulls. Human skulls.
It's impressive, but what is this supposed to tell me?
Asked
They're
the doctor.
human or human aware?
Hackneyan wiped his face and scowled. Orthan, are you dense?
Yes.
Think for a moment. They came from beyond the edge of the galaxy.
And
the
they're
art
human.
is composed of human figures and human skulls. And if you had to describe that ship as something other than a ship, what words would you choose?
Cathedral?
Dr. Orthan shrugged.
Temple?
Try
Okay, that works too.
cathedral, said Dr. Tarani.
Hey!
Again, Dr. Orthan shrugged.
So what? They resemble humans.
Oh, that is weird. It almost looks like it has a bird's head on this. Maybe it's just the angle, but it almost looks like this is not an Imperium ship. Just different brows than usual. Is this Rogue Trader art? I'm not actually sure. It has a lot of the detail I expect, but that opening figure looks significantly different than I was expecting. Also, this thing must get replaced a lot because the guns are literally pointing right at it. If they're going to the side, sure, but if they ever want to shoot right ahead, which apparently they can do, ooh, no, that's like they have to aim up or around it because this thing is gone.
Worship skulls and fly around in cathedral ships. What is that?
Human skulls?
Oh no.
Oh, yes, Dr. Tarani said triumphantly.
By the splitting stars, are you seriously suggesting they've returned from deep space?
The fuck?
The corking...
Dr. Orthan started, eyes going wide as
fuck?
saucers. The doors suddenly burst open then, and Dr. Orthan threw himself across the floor and under a desk.
Oh, this is interesting. They're making a reference to one of the previous empires in Star Wars. Sorry, I've looked them up briefly, but because it almost never comes up except in ancient, super weapons, I didn't really ever expect to hear a reference to this, so I'm actually quite lacking on this one.
Standing at the entrance was Renfai and several clones, all armed. The Jedi had his lightsaber out, its golden blade burning the air.
Ooh, golden blade. Don't see that one often.
Come on,
So I like the
now!
background of it.
He ordered, and with a little coaxing from the clones, the scientists began to follow as he led them out of the laboratory.
Escape pods?
There were 14 clones of assorted ranks here. The captain of the ship and a sergeant leading the way while Renfai brought up the rear, making sure no one fell behind. Between them all were the scientists, with Sheena at the front of that group. What's happening? Dr. Sheena
Bad
asked
shit?
as she jogged alongside
I'm pretty sure
the
this
clone
is an
troopers.
Imperial design, so it
We've
wouldn't
been
quite be
boarded.
like that.
A
in
retreat has
Star
been
Story yet.
called. We are escorting you to the escape pods now, one of the clones said. The Syrian scientists felt desperate fear
The
consume
escape
and
pods can't
replace the
even jump. I don't
curiosity
think
of
they
her
can.
natural
That's
disposition.
probably not a good idea, actually.
But at least the laboratory
They
was
don't
not
know-
far from the
Oh, well, I can
escape
talk.
pods. They reached the door
They don't
access
know why,
panel,
but yeah, it's a
and
bad
Sheena
idea.
felt her heart leap into her throat when she saw it. Smashed. Someone had gotten here first, and had damaged the control panel to keep them from getting in. But she was relieved to find
Ooh. So they're trying to evacuate the ship, and someone inside the ship is taking action not to escape. It's a good thing there's not like a Imperium has a habit of boarding enemy ships. I mean, that would be crazy.
that it would not be enough, as one of the clones retrieved a code cylinder from his belt pack.
And because they're actually
The
more
trooper
aware of the
walked to
technology,
the
it does
door
help right now.
and fit the cylinder into a slot in the wall, forcing the door to open. As the Durasteel door slid back, a massive blue arm extended out from the now open room, seizing the clone and yanking him inside.
Oh, he dead.
The man screamed, but only for a few seconds before his voice was drowned out by the sound of blaster fire.
Blaster?
The 13 other clones that were traveling with them had formed up on the opposite side of the door and began firing into the room.
Oh,
Sheena
okay.
stumbled away,
He wasn't being
falling
shot,
onto
they're
her rear
shooting
as she
into the-
watched the
whatever
clones
grabbed him.
empty their blaster packs into the escape pod access. Suddenly, there was a sound, like thunder, but shorter, deeper. It shook the doctor to her bones, and her hands snapped up to her head to cover her ears. But suddenly, she found herself bewildered as a warm, wet sensation washed over her. Her hands pulled away, coated in deep, arterial red.
Oh, so it's blue, so it's the Ultramarine chapter, and he's going full crunchy on the clones. Yeah, that's not the first time he's probably killed humans. You know, it wouldn't really bother him because, Space Marines. But probably not what he was expecting. Although seeing the scientists who are not covered and don't look human probably makes this a lot easier for them.
It was hot, extremely hot, and yet her hands, her arms, her whole body felt cold. She looked up.
How the hell did they
blinking
survive this one?
droplets of color out of her eyes, watching. 5 bodies went flying, falling into pieces with just 2 shots of whatever that weapon had been. The clone troopers it had struck turned into smears of brilliant color against the back walls of the hallway.
Yeah.
They didn't even scream. They were just dead.
Oh, is
gone
he using a
before they
bolter on them?
realized it.
And they're going with the explosive round
Someone
variant.
was screaming for them. Dr. Sheena looked back, expecting to see Dr. Tirani letting loose with all the force in her lungs.
I'm guessing
Such
that
was the
person's
wailing she could hear. But it wasn't Tirani making the sound. That much was clear as Sheena's eyes found the other doctor's face. Skin paling, mouth pursed, eyes bulging.
Oh,
It was Dr.
Not
Sheena
dead.
herself who was making the noise, the realization terrifying her even more than the gory spectacle she was being forced to witness. She clapped her hands over her own mouth, regretting the action instantly as the bitter, powerful taste of blood touched her lips. Renfai leapt across.
okay, so I want to just call out here more of a writing aspect. The bitter power taste of blood. That is a unique line. How to put it this way? I like the bitter taste of blood because that does get it across, because that's a non-standard way to do it. Normally people, when they go blood, it's like, oh, there's iron in it, it tastes like iron. So it's like the iron or the metallic taste of blood, which, while accurate, is very overused. The bitter aspect, I like that because it does show a sense that you can attribute to it, like spice, bitterness, sweet, savory, all those different types of sensations are things you can get a direct aspect to. Power, though, like specifically, listen to the line again.
Powerful taste of blood touched.
The powerful taste of blood. What does that mean? Like, is it an amount? Is like that more than little? Is it a mouthful? You get the idea of what they're going for here. Saying it's a powerful bitter taste is just upgrading it, but it doesn't really function as a good upgrade. I will do it. It's an easy shorthand. Most people understand power means more. That's all this word is standing in for, though, because it doesn't actually add anything to it. It's fine in a short pinch, but because this is such a descriptive scene and so much is happening and you're getting so many internal thoughts showing it, this is just one of those little things where, like, it's kind of a throwaway because you already have the actual descriptive bitter taste of blood, which is perfect. It's non-standard. It stands out. It shows that maybe her blood is a different taste. I can't say for sure because I've never tasted alien blood, and that would be really weird if I did. But then just going powerfully, I was like, it's a tacked on word. I don't like that aspect. Not bad, though. It's just, it's extra words because it goes with what people expect. Again, I'm an English major. Things like this do stand out to me a little more than most. This is what you get for writing. Yeah, a master's in fiction. Oy. Still, though, it's not bad. Just
Renfai leapt across the corridor then, landing next to the door and seizing the code cylinder, which was still protruding from the wall.
Oh?
In the same instant, the large blue arm which had taken the first clone reached out and grabbed Renfai by the collar.
Oh.
The doctor had a better view of it this time. Enormous, metal, mechanized.
Surprised he's still using his hand.
Pull the Jedi into the room. Renfai twisted the cylinder, slamming the door closed on the arm. At the same moment, Renfai swept the glowing yellow blade of his lightsaber up, cutting through the thick limb as easily as through the bulkhead of a ship.
Oh, see, now that is interesting. Just give an idea. I was assuming that maybe it would be slightly lightsaber resistant because there's a lot of very dense material in Space Marine armor. Maybe Terminator armor would be different, or some of the other variants, maybe, or even some of the forms that have shields. But I'm looking at strength of a lightsaber going, it's really damn good at cutting a lot of things. But in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, they show the extent of what you can do with a lightsaber by putting it into a door to cut a hole in right in the very beginning of the movie. As much as Phantom Menace has issues, it did establish a lot of really cool aspects. And showing just how fast it can cut through significant portions of metal is one of them. Space Marines have a lot of metal there. I can see if it had to push through it a little because of how dense it is, but this is a lot more powerful on the lightsaber side than I thought. So what I'm basically trying to say is they're not nearly as, oh my god, we're fucked, when it comes to melee with, well, Jedi. The Jedi not having armor might be an issue. I mean, it's not like they could get shot in the back and that would kill them off, and there was ever an Order 66 put out to do exactly that, and they would be very susceptible to bullets to the head or the back, or are they everywhere? Yeah, but I mean, if when they get into melee, it'll actually be something they could deal with. All they gotta do, though, is make sure the Imperium doesn't catch on and doesn't try to run into melee, and that one of the chapters was definitely not the crusading chapter, maybe something that like wearing a Templar motif that really like to get into there personally and slash them up with chainswords. I mean, that would make it actually a lot worse for them if they just stayed back and shot. Granted, they also have the Ultramarines chapter, or the variation or a successor chapter where that would be a thing. I'm sure one of them will eventually I was going to say fuck it up, but more just regret it because their doctrine doesn't actually quite work like they hope.
Another bark of thunder rang out through the crack in the doorway, and Renfai sidestepped the projectile, pulling the arm with him as he did and allowing the door to slam shut fully. The dismembered limb clung tenaciously to him and almost pulled the Jedi down as it fell away from the door.
I love showing how heavy it is.
It was heavy, and when Renfai seized it by the wrist and tore it off, it took most of his robe with it. He spun, pulling the code cylinder free from the wall and burning the input slot with the end of his lightsaber. We must hurry to the other side to reach the escape pods there. Now!
I guess
the
the
Jedi
design's similar
ordered.
enough on escape pods.
Some of them are in shock, General, said a clone kneeling beside Dr. Sheena.
Oh.
Was she in shock? Dr. Sheena wiggled her fingers
Yeah,
and
she's
toes,
definitely in shock.
feeling them as cold,
Getting covered in
clammy,
blood would usually
barely
do that.
coherent extensions of her body. Her heart was racing, and she was sweating despite how cold it was. It was so cold, despite the heat of the blood which coated her. Was that natural?
Oh, now that's interesting. Normally when people say someone's going into shock, they just kind of zone out and move to a different character. It's nice that you're actually going to Sheena and you're showing a physiological, well, her physiological symptoms, because one, I don't know how it'd be different in aliens, so we'll just go with similar to humans. But when you're in shock, sometimes losing body heat or feeling like you're losing body heat because you're actually getting hot to the touch because you're losing it through the pores of the head, that can be one of the ways to show it. Just kind of shutting down, freezing up, and sometimes literally feeling like you're freezing. Just hypersensitivity to temperature is also sometimes a thing, but I'm not sure if that's a common one or just a rarity. I'm honestly not sure about that part. But it's really cool that they're showing that aspect, because you're seeing that this is what it looks like on her, because she's not focusing on, oh shit, the guy's arm got cut off, but oh shit, I got blood and it's hot. Oh God, why is it so hot? I'm freezing and it's burning. I don't know how. It's like that disconnect in sensation. It's just really well done.
No, you idiot. You're definitely in shock. She screamed into the sluggish void of her thoughts. With great effort, she slowed her breathing, reaching up to put a heavy hand on the clone kneeling over her, allowing him to help her rise to her feet. I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
No, you're probably not.
She said, arms and legs
probably
trembling
really not.
now, responding well enough. Dr. Tirani had also gone into some form of shock, but she was not recovering from it nearly as swiftly as Dr. Sheena seemed to be. Dr. Hackney was up, helping to steady Dr. Sheena.
I'm surprised
his
they're all
own hands
alive.
clammy and covered in sweat, but his face, at least, seemed controlled, disciplined. His expression not one of fear, but of concern, not of helplessness, but of proactivity. That gave her a bit more strength as they were all rushed down the corridor towards the hangar.
They cut the lights
Numbly,
on the
she
picture,
could
that's
barely
what changed.
feel her own footfalls as they left that stained place and the monster behind the door. But even as they moved away from the bloody gate which contained their enemy, Dr. Sheena suspected they were not fleeing towards safety. Her suspicions were confirmed when the group of clones and scientists reached the broken doorway which led into the hangar. There was fire and screaming. All the starfighters and bombers had long since been launched, leaving the hangar a mostly empty expanse of flickering lights and intermittent walls of shadow. On the far side of the expanse, the still broadly lit sections revealed troopers fighting viciously and dying in droves.
Ooh, so we're getting the battle scene. Beforehand, the first introduction of a I was going to say stormtrooper, wow. A space marine just being terrifying, but it's the monster in the dark. You only saw the hand, and they beat it. But now we're actually going to see the full expanse and like that first reveal of what the Imperium is. Because it doesn't really feel like a reveal yet, but it feels really damn good.
They were fighting things, but what they were she could not discern. Morbid fascination seized her tightly as nearly a score
Giant
of
humans?
clone troopers,
I wonder if they'll
all
come to that
standing in a
conclusion.
brilliant line, seemed to transform.
What?
Blossoming like time-lapsed roses, their upper bodies twisting into the air, white becoming fountains
Oh,
of
they're being
cascading
mealeed.
crimson. And the thing doing it to them, it was large, like a Gundark, but thicker and much
Gundam?
faster. Was it a droid?
Nope.
She had
Also,
no
this is the
time
original
left
art.
to ponder
Ew.
as Dr. Hackney pulled her along.
And there's the
battle was
sinew.
taking
Oh,
place
they
at
went
the
really on
far
detail
side
on
of the
this one.
hangar, and in moments, Dr. Sheena realized why. A massive alien drill tube, obviously the device that had been used to board the ship, was protruding from the wall above them. The fight had started here and moved to where it was now, but it wasn't just the boarding vessel which made that obvious. It was the bodies. So many bodies.
Yeah, and this is the part where I was talking about earlier. There's entire chapters where their entire shtick is get in there with a sword and fuck shit up. Against clones or most things with how armored they are, that's probably fine. Also, is it just me or is he not wearing a helmet? Honestly, that's a 40k thing. Sure, I'll roll with that one. Everyone doesn't seem to wear a helmet if they're in charge. Only the people who are going to die first wear helmets. which also imply this guy's not as weak as the normal person. Also, dear God, just by comparison size, I love how they're hyper-emphasizing the shoulder pads. They're huge in a way that even most Space Marines don't have, or more Primaris wouldn't. So this is definitely Firstborn then. Oh, this might be before Gilman's return then. Oh, because they're more squat bodies. They're more, well, proportionally squat. But it did over, I cannot speak today, did have the emphasis then on the shoulder pads being so massive. Yeah, and it just, you can see that the mass of that one pad is probably equal to the clones themselves. Oh, man. Brutal art.
What the flickering light managed to illuminate was a scene straight out of a horror vid. Clones had been eviscerated, torn apart, physically crushed, and rent into halves.
Damn!
They lay in slick piles where they had fallen.
What the hell is this
Some in firing
from?
positions, others in circles where they had attempted to surround something lethal. But Dr. Sheena's wide eyes had barely witnessed a quarter of the carnage.
The Jedi might have an advantage here,
Troopers
but that's
hung
about
like grim banners from steel beams and rafters. They were in pieces.
This looks like
an
Clone
arm
Wars. I have
here,
no idea
a
what that
heavy,
is.
bloody helmet there, splayed out and left like gruesome parodies of the B-1 battle droids the clones themselves left dismembered in their wake. If that hallway outside of the escape pods had been the gates of hell, then the hangar was Gehenna proper.
Yeah.
And then there was the smell. It forced its way through all of Dr. Sheena's mental defenses, cutting even through the torpor of her shock.
Oh, I know this. This is, oh, they did a thing where there was like Star Wars zombies. Oh, I forgot about this because I blocked it out of my mind. Oh.
It was thicker than the air, like a violating presence, stuffing itself into her nose, into her mouth. She could taste it. It was like rotten meat set next to a scented cinnamon candle, but so much worse.
Hey, clones. Ugh.
Like feces and sugar mixed into a pot and set to simmer for days. It was more than Dr.
Going for that M rating on this one.
And she heaved for the second time that day, as did Dr. Hackneyan and Dr. Tirani, spilling their most recent meals onto the gore-laden floor, while Sheena herself was left gasping.
Disgusting.
They can't be human, Dr. Hackneyan said, wiping his mouth.
Transhuman.
They just can't be. Dr. Tirani began to sob, falling to her knees and covering her eyes. Renfai went to her, but she seemed incensed, her limbs trembling as though she were caught in the throes of a seizure. Dr. Sheena tried to force her eyes forward, tried to not notice the slaughter around her. Instead, she noticed the captain of the clones, standing stiff as a statue, his eyes fixed on the battle being waged on the far side of the hangar.
Oh, there's a battle going on still.
Oh, Scrog, he cursed. Come on, get her up, get them all moving, he ordered, going down to one knee and raising his blaster rifle.
Maybe he's not wearing a helmet, he might get lucky.
Just noticed us. Dr. Sheena rushed to where he was kneeling and came down beside the captain, following his aim to where the battle was taking place. Clones were dying quickly, and the lights at the far end of the hangar were completely shot out.
Is there an image?
She could see little more than the shadows cast by the flames,
barely see
and the muzzle flashes illuminating figures for microseconds at a time. Still, she squinted. She tried to see. Dr. Sheena guessed there were at least 30 clone troopers down there, taking cover in the flaming wreckage of an ATT they had brought up from the lower deck, presumably to help them fight the enemy off.
An ATT?
They were firing, and despite the darkness, their shots certainly seemed to be tracking something. Not droids. Dr. Sheena was almost certain now. Too fast, too coordinated. Get moving, the clone said, handing Dr. Sheena his blaster pistol, holster and all. Dr. Sheena nodded hesitantly, but took the weapon, managing...
I mean, on the one hand, giving away a weapon in a battlefield seems like a bad idea. On the other hand, she needs a weapon, and he's probably not going to be alive long enough to draw it if he's already out of range for his main weapon. Yeah, I love how they're building up the Imperium as being goddamn terrifying. Bringing in some, well, I guess heavy artillery, the ATT. If that's the one I think it is, the six-legged walker, that is pretty damn heavy, and that's a very large hangar, which admittedly hangars usually are in Star Destroyers. Or, well, I guess are they Star Destroyers yet? Venators? I don't remember if they were called Star Destroyers yet. I don't think they were. Huh.
To strap it around her waist despite her cold, trembling fingers. Just before she was made to move on, she thought she could make out a silhouette against the fires, but Dr. Hackney tugged her up and away before she could get a good look. They were both running, supporting each other's strides as the scientists did their best not to slip and fall. They flinched as they heard blaster fire start up behind them. The captain and several clone troopers had stayed behind to buy them time, and were engaging the enemy even then. Following the other clones, they crossed the bloody hangar and entered into an adjoining corridor. As they began to make their way down the well-lit, pristine hallway, Dr. Sheena looked back. Dr. Orthan was running after them, 2 clones just behind him, and the Jedi...
yeah, someone's about to get not alive.
Ren 5 was just in front of Orthan, carrying the still weeping Dr. Tarani in his arms. His lightsaber was off, but still gripped in his right hand. She turned to look forward and noticed the 4 clones in front of them halting, forming up at the bend ahead, and creating a second defensive line.
Once we get around this corner, it's a straight shot to the room.
Ren.
All I can say right now is I've seen, the Space Marine animation by, the Astartes animation by the channel Astartes. And I'm just thinking about how well the autocannon or the laser machine gun fire worked in that one. It's like, oh, they're forming up ranks to shoot if anyone enters their line of sight. I don't think it's going to work that well. Oh, no, it's probably not.
Vi yelled as he caught up to and then passed Dr. Hackney and
They have heavier weapons, they just don't have them on hand.
Keep running!
Don't need that normally.
For once, Dr. Sheena obeyed his instructions with zeal, pumping her legs as hard and as fast as she could. As she ran around the bend,
says, run away.
all
You probably
4
want to run away.
clones stationed there tossed their thermal detonators and turned away to take cover. She
Grenades,
screamed.
even if they're not great, are usually
Dr.
something.
Orthan had still been behind them, but she couldn't hear her own voice as a thunderous explosion of air and heat gusted through the corridor and pushed her face down into the floor. Stunned, she lay there, sure her nose was broken, half sure she had been concussed. She would have remained there if not for Dr. Hackney's help, who had stopped to pull her up once more. They killed Orthan. They blew him up. They killed him, she babbled. Dr. Hackney was shaking his head, his lips moving, his face animated and terrified.
He's probably already
He was saying something, but she couldn't hear him, realizing that a ringing in her ears was drowning everything else out, leaving her in eerie, inappropriate silence. She looked away from Hackney, who was trying to pull her forward, her eyes darting back. She couldn't see the clones, not through the smoke, but she could see blue flashes in the murk, and something else. There was something there, but Dr. Hackney yanked her forward hard, getting...
I like how they're showing they're still being chased. There's still the pursuer. God damn, this is... As far as showing something is terrifying, this is well done. They're showing Space Marines being the monster in the dark, and they're highlighting it. So I thought by now they would have given up on that, because most people, you get a single room, maybe a half a scene, where you can pull off, this is dark, this is terrifying. But after a while, after so much, you just move on and just show the monster, reveal it. It's honestly rather hard not to, because you want to get to the reveal. And when that happens, it's going to be pretty damn cool. But this is just, I like that he's drawing out, not too much. You're seeing a little more revealed here and there, and everything in the background, there's just parts of them. You still see parts of them. You've never had one directly in front of them. It's always been running or seeing it in the distance, seeing it cutting down people. And it's never been the focus of the image or the focus of the scene. It's just been part of the scene. So we're not quite at the reveal yet, just at the moment where they are still mostly shrouded in the dark, in the smoke. And it just works really well for that.
Getting her attention back in front of her and almost throwing her with how hard he began to shove. Dr. Sheena felt a flush cover her face, recovering her wits and running at full sprint again, not needing to be pushed anymore as her scattered senses collected themselves. She could see it now, the door. Ren 5 had already opened it, and he was standing there, saber out and activated, Dr. Tarani cradled against him with his other hand. He was looking at something behind her. The instant Dr. Sheena reached him, he shoved Dr. Tarani into her arms roughly.
Take her! Get out of here!
The Jedi ordered. Dr. Sheena almost stumbled with the sudden weight of her colleague and turned to hand her off to Hackney, but he wasn't beside her any longer. Wait, where did...
He dead.
She started, but Renfai cut her off as he shoved her into the room with a gesture of his hand.
Go!
Force powers, man.
He said. They were both thrown by what felt almost like a magnetic pull, and the doctor was sent sprawling onto the floor, Tarani falling right beside her an instant before the door slammed shut.
This is both insanely cool, because while no one is saying, either in character or in the narration, what is happening to all those guards who are not, or I guess the guards as well as the doctors who aren't there anymore, she thinks the clones are the ones who killed the first doctor and that she doesn't know what happened to the second yet, and she'll probably blame Renfai because she just doesn't like Jedi. But we know as an outside observer, they're watching something and she's running and she doesn't hear anything or see anything coming after her. They're dead. They're all dead because there's a space marine there and it's chasing them, which means there's going to be a fight between Renfai and a space marine. I really want to see how this goes, because I would put a space marine under a Jedi if they know how to fight, and Renfai seems to know how to fight. If it's against a Padawan, of course, I would put the space marine every time, because again, if you don't know how to fight, you don't know how to fight. But if you know how to fight, force powers are bullshit, man. And there's also a reason psychers are downright scary in 40k. If you know what you're doing and you have a good one, it is, yeah. Or alternatively, if you don't, but that's a completely different reason. But goddamn, they're also still sticking with her rather than moving on to the next character. And I was like, I want that, but I want to see this fight. Also, if it happens off screen and he dies off screen, I'm going to be very disappointed. That would be disappointing, because I like how they built up Renfai as someone who isn't perfect. His normally very solid, classical, composed Jedi, they broke him with the sheer overwhelming, what the fuck am I seeing? And now he's just getting back to himself in a way that's probably not how he wanted, because he's having to pull himself together during a firefight. I want to see more of his perspective, if he survives it. Okay, so full disclosure, I didn't realize how long this episode was. I would love to watch all of it, but I also can't because I need to go take care of a puppy. Yeah, he's adorable toy poodle. We thought he was a miniature. No, he was a toy. He's just a very large toy with a really soft coat. And I'm actually not having allergy attacks with it because I'm massively allergic to dogs. So that's all a good thing. Also, I need to go make sure he didn't shit on the bed again. He might have, because I didn't realize how long I'd be recording. I'm watching him right now. Should I have maybe taken care of that before? Yes, that's on me. That's a mistake. And I'm not just cutting the video here because I can smell anything, because I'm telling myself I don't, and until I see otherwise, I can keep saying that little delusion. Yeah. Puppies, man. Gotta house train them. That's fun. So all the same, though. Thanks for watching, everyone, and wish me luck, because I'm going to go need it. If you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. And if there's anything I missed, let me know, because holy shit, there's so much stuff right now. And I think I can definitely say the writing has improved with each chapter, and so far, I really like where it's going. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.